Hello everybody, Maven here, and you remember the mid-season 20 patch notes, how they buffed a lot of weapon archetypes, exotic weapons, exotic armor, and abilities? They just overhauled the game entirely, nerfed a lot of things, buffed a lot of things. Now, one of these buffs that is widely untalked about is the knockout buff. I'll put the patch notes somewhere on the screen somewhere, but they gave knockout a 40% damage buff. You put two and two together, you mix it with the Synthoceps, and you got yourselves a pretty powerful build. Now let me tell you, there is one taboo word, one forbidden word a lot of us YouTubers dare not to use, because if we do, 1100 keyboard warriors will go down into the comment section and ridicule us. And that is the word OP. We always try to avoid the word OP for reasons you may understand. It splits the comment section into an army, two armies going at each other, one who agrees it's OP and one who clearly doesn't. Now, today's build I'm not going to say is definitively OP, but man is it close. It's a pretty powerful build. I was shocked at how much damage it was doing and how tanky you are and how you're constantly healing and just how effective it is. So we're going to break that down in today's video. Don't forget to drop a like and I hope you enjoy. Now let's waste no time here and get straight into a damage comparison. We're going to compare the Hothead against our melees, and we have Explosive Light procced with Impact Casing and Adept Big Ones. So this should be a pretty heavy hitter, and it also is a pretty meta choice. And as you can see here, it takes just about 2.5 rockets to kill Carl. Now that seems pretty good, doesn't it? Well, let's get to our melee. And suddenly, it doesn't seem as good. So what we are doing today is an absolute nuke, to say the very least. And believe it or not, there are actually only 3 things contributing to our damage here. So the first thing is, of course, the Synthoceps. Now I'll read it out just in case there's people who are really new to the game watching this, but it increases your melee lunge range to 5.5 meters, and your melee and super damage are improved when you're surrounded. Your super gets buffed by 50%, which is a nice bonus to have, but your melee does 3 times damage when you have this procced. And the next thing that is buffing our melee damage is the knockout aspect. We already went over in the intro, but it now doubles your melee damage according to the patch notes, but it also says it only works with your uncharged melee. However, I feel like it's bugged and it's still working with our shoulder charge just based off of that Carl clip, but it's just a hunch. Anyways, you can proc knockout by critically wounding a target or breaking their shields. That's pretty free to do. You can literally just shotgun a target and you proc knockout. Anything you do a proc it, it's just kill clip for your fists. And then the last thing buffing our melee damage is the 1-2 punch perk on our shotgun. This used to be crazy OP, but Bungie nerfed it, but it still doubles your melee damage. Now let's break down the numbers here. So our base punch against Carl unbuffed is doing 10,246 damage. So we are getting a 3x buff from Synthoceps, 2x from knockout, and 2x from 1-2 punch. Now let's take a look again at the clip where we one-shot shoulder charged Carl. We'll take a little snippet, a little screenshot from that, put it up on the screen right here. So these are the 2 damage numbers we're getting. 254,382 from the melee impact, and then 92,503 from the area of effect. And the rest of these numbers are from a shotgun shot and also an artifact mod we'll talk about later. So anyways, these 2 numbers together are 346,885 damage for our melee alone, which means that it is a 3,285% damage increase to our base melee. Now, if we take a look at a screenshot for when we shot him with the Explosive Light rocket launcher, we're getting these 2 numbers here, 118,931 for the impact and then 37,110 for the blast. These 2 numbers combine into 156,041 damage. So you compare these numbers side by side, and the melee is doing a little bit more than 2 Explosive Light rockets. Now you may be thinking that, oh, when we use our shoulder charge, then what are we gonna do? The rocket's definitely gonna jump ahead and sustain DPS, right? Well, let's take a look. So here's what it looks like when we simply just punch Carl. No 1-2 punch, no shoulder charging, just punching. And we are able to take him out in just 6 punches at a crazy fast rate. So let's do a side-by-side comparison with the punching and the Explosive Light rocket launcher. And it looks like the punching does a little bit more burst. And also, that's not even counting the initial 1-2 1-2 punch shoulder charge that you're gonna do. Now, I will admit things can go south if you lose your Synthoceps buff or your knockout buff, so we do have a backup. Because this build is based around a shotgun, we can actually use this explosive light rocket launcher with this build. So worst case scenario, we sit back and just shoot rockets. And in either scenario, to help our DPS, we are running Spark of Shock so that our pulse grenade is gonna jolt the target. Applying that jolt is gonna help our DPS greatly. Now, I know what some people might want to bring up in the comments section. You know, why are you running Arc when you could be running baby hammers? I do even have that build, and I even use that build. This is the build in question. So this is currently the meta Titan build with the Synthoceps. With the baby hammers, it is very strong. I am not denying that, but both of these builds have their benefits. Now, the first comparison to make with these two builds is going to be the survivability, the healing. On Solar, you got the healing grenades because you're basically relying on Soul Invictus to make sunspots, and entering a sunspot applies restoration. But every now and then, when you're ad clearing with the baby hammer, you will sometimes whiff your baby hammer and lose it. You'll throw it off a cliff, or you'll throw it all the way across the room. That's why you kind of got to throw it around your feet so it doesn't bounce too far. And you know, sometimes a baby hammer can whiff against smaller targets, and it is pretty annoying sometimes. And that's not really a problem on Arc because you're punching and you don't really melee whiff in PvE as much as you do in PvP. So if you're in that situation where you desperately need a sunspot to survive and you whiff your hammer, you got your healing grenade, but you're kind of losing out on that grenade slot. You know, on Arc, you have those pulse grenades that are very strong and also apply jolt, which are definitely a little bit more beneficial. Right here, you kind of have to crutch on healing. And another thing I will say is that with Roaring Flames ×3 paired with the Synthoceps buff, your baby hammers do hit very hard. I'll put up another side-by-side comparison against Carl. It's either a one-shot or 3 baby hammers. But in this situation, I will say that the baby hammers have more sustained DPS against fatter targets. Because, you know, on Arc, I have to go and hunt down another target and punch them so I can heal and also proc knockout again, and then go back to DPSing. However, I will say that this is the second take I had against Charlie with the baby hammers. And there was, on the first take, I actually whiffed 2 hammer throws and died because of it. And that can happen because when you're doing difficult content and really relying on your baby hammer to connect on your target so you get that sunspot to heal, that is what you need to do to live. And if you miss that hammer, you are going to pay the price. So that sense, the Arc can be a little bit more consistent. However, the Solar is a little bit more effective when it works. And I'll show another clip from the aftermath of that Carl clip where I was just ad clearing for the heck of it before I finished the recording. And believe me, I am not throwing for content. Scions are small, nimble targets, and also I suck at Destiny 2. So I'm whiffing some of these hammers, and if this was high-level content, you know, like a Master Nightfall, for example, I would be dying because I'm missing these hammers. So it's a lot riskier. However, like I said, when you do land those hammers, it is probably more effective than Arc. So what I'm trying to say is that Solar can be more effective, but it's higher risk, higher reward, whereas Arc is a lot more consistent and a lot faster to use. Like if you were speedrunning, which of these two would you rather have? With Arc, you have that shoulder charge movement, you have that thruster movement, you have that lunge movement. You can get around a lot quicker and nuke fat targets a lot faster. Solar is simply just better for surviving if you can land your hammers confidently. Now, with all of that damage testing and science out of the way, let's talk about my weapon choices. So ultimately, sniper, shotgun, rocket is what I ended up on, and this is what I felt worked the best for me. And in the energy slot, I would recommend none other than a 1-2 punch shotgun. That's kind of required for this build. An Arc one preferably, like there is the Xenoclast, there's the Deadweight, there's the hand-in-hand, which I'd not recommend. But yeah, if you have a Deadweight, that would be perfect because you can run Arc reserves and have also the reserves for your launcher. And Explosive Light is very good because this is also an Orb Printer build, which we'll get into in a bit. And then I decided to go with the Sniper for range because sometimes there's like a sniper up on a ridge or something, or an enemy that's very far away. However, if you just cannot stand not having an exotic slot, then you could go with an Izanagi's Burden, or if you didn't have an Arc 1-2 punch shotgun, you could go with like a Gallarhorn, so that you didn't have to like run reserves and scavenger, and that works as well. Now, if you were doing easy content and you wanted to just get around quicker, you can run an Eager Edge Sword. That is another thing I would recommend. If you suck at sniping, you could go with something like an arbalest, but another loadout I'd recommend is actually the conditional finality. Pair that probably with a reconstruction commemoration for your ranged option. Now, the reason the conditional finality is pretty good with this build is because it kind of works like a better 1-2 punch, because it actually freezes the target, and punching a frozen target actually gives you another melee damage multiplier. I actually don't know how big that multiplier is, but I'll show another comparison against Carl. So we'll do another side-by-side, but just with some standing punches. Now the DPS is similar, but with the conditional, you get the free freeze, the shatter, the ignition, and those effects are good for clearing the little trash mobs around the fat target. In addition, the freeze can stop the fat target from being able to attack you, so you get those additional benefits from the conditional finality. And if you were curious, you can actually do the little slide freeze shoulder charge combo. It is a little bit tight, but it does work. So with that being said, this is a loadout I would highly recommend as well, if you didn't have to deal with like an ultra tanky boss. So, but this is the one I ended up on, of course, like I said. Because Explosive Light is just way too good because this is an Orb Printer build. Now let's go over how that is. So we have a mod on our gloves called Heavy Handed, which makes our powered melee final blows create orbs of power. Now you may only think that that works with our Seismic Strike. However, you'd be wrong. Knockout says that when it's online, it infuses our uncharged melee attacks with arc energy. So if you can see by the background gameplay, when I'm just punching ads with my uncharged melee, they are exploding with arc energy, and that is Knockout doing its work. And when that is happening, it actually counts our uncharged melees as charged melees. So if you look at the orb feed on the bottom left corner of the screen, we're making orbs for every single uncharged punch that we do. And so that is how we're able to print so many orbs and easily get Explosive Light ×6 procced. And all of these orbs that we're creating are also generating a ton of super energy. And on top of that, we're running double hands-on on our helmet. So we're making even more super energy for all of these punches. But now you may think there's going to be orbs scattered everywhere all over the room and we need to find them, right? But thanks to a new mod called Powerful Attraction, we can simply activate our Thruster class ability and it just picks up all the orbs for us. And this mod is also actually like a makeshift Wormhusk crown for Titan, because there's this mod on our boots called Recuperation. So we pick up an orb, we get some health back. I'll show an example in a clip here. We can stand near an orb, we can be weak, and then when we use our thruster, it picks up the orb around us and we just get some health back. So it's kind of like a mini Wormhusk crown. So that is going to be excellent for survivability. And on the topic of survivability, let's go over our fragments here, because we have Spark of Resistance. So we get, I believe it's a 40% resist when we are surrounded by combatants, which should be like almost at all times. That's pretty good as well. And then we have Spark of Feedback. So taking melee damage briefly increases our outgoing melee damage. So when we get stomped by a boss or just punched by anybody, it's going to increase our melee damage by 75%. So when we are in the face of a boss trying to DPS them with their 1-2 punch shotgun, Spark of Feedback is going to be amazing to help our sustain damage. And then we have Spark of Frequency, so our melee hits are going to increase our reload speed. So we basically just get maxed out reload speed on all of our weapons at all times. That's awesome. And then our other aspect is going to be Touch of Thunder, so our pulse grenades generate ionic traces. And pulse grenades are already some of the hardest hitting nades in the game. Now let's finish off our mod setup here. So it's also very much a grenade spam build. So we got Ashes to Assets to get super energy on grenade kills. Then we have Impact Induction, so when we punch something, we get grenade cooldown. And then Focusing Strikes, when we punch something, we get class ability cooldown. And Thruster is going to be proccing Outreach on our class items. So these abilities are just going to like tie into each other. On our chest and boots here, we got Arc Reserve and Arc Scavenger for our dead weight and our hot head. Got melee damage resist and concussive dampener because they give a 15% damage resist for their respective types. And then to round out our boots here, we got Absolution. So when we do that little thruster combo and pick up those orbs, we get ability cooldowns for everything. And then this one's a little bit odd. If you watched my videos before, you may know that I would definitely run Bomber in this slot instead of Utility Kickstart. But there's a reason that I have Utility Kickstart here, and it's very important. Sometimes this bug should not happen, but it does. When your super is full and you try to pick up an orb of power, it won't let you sometimes. You just walk over it and it won't collect it because your build actually has nothing to benefit from it, and the game knows that, so it actually won't pick up the orb. But if you have utility kickstart and have a reason to utilize armor charge, then the game will allow you to pick up the orbs. So it is very important to have something on your build that expends armor charge. Now, stat-wise here, always go 100 resilience as a Titan, never not. And then for intellect, always go with the minimum of 3. After that, try to invest 100 in resilience if you can, and then after that, put the rest into discipline. Recovery and mobility don't really matter too much. Now let's talk about the artifact mods, because there's some that are really juicing up this build this season. Amped Up allows our amplification meter to go up to 20 seconds. Safe to say we're going to be amplified at all times. And then Thunderous Retort, while we're amplified or critically wounded, our super does more damage. That's just icing on the cake right there. And then Electric Armor gets us resist while amplified. So resist here, resist mods on our chest, and then Spark of Resistance. We are just very tanky, and that's super nice when we're up in the face of opponents. And then Lightning Strikes Twice basically just says that this season, our grenades recharge quicker. That is also another icing on the cake thing. And then Shock and Awe is going to be an important one. So this is one of the big reasons that you want to run arc weapons, because your arc final blows while you're amplified summon a jolting lightning storm. So everything we do is basically a Trinity Ghoul. Even our knockout punches, our melees are basically Trinity Ghouls that jolt targets. And that is why it is super good for ad clear this season. And this arc version of the Synthoceps build is definitely way better for ad clear than the solar one. I can tell you that from experience. So now I'll show a couple speed runs that I did in a solo Legend Lost sector. This is the Chamber of Starlight on the Dreaming City. So I was able to actually do speed runs of this in under a minute, and that was with me doing a little bit of ad clear for the video for show. However, I probably could have gone faster if I just eager edged through, you know? But yeah, we're able to stay alive just by punching things, activating thruster to collect those orbs and do the little worm husk combo. And that's nice to have, just constant ability regen, because remember, when we punch, we're triggering those mods on our gloves and just getting abilities for everything we do, which is nice. And we are just tanking so much damage. Like, if I was playing on another character, I would just be instantly dead to all this fire and gunfire that I'm running through. This first run here, I actually like die at the end of it because I get shot by like 3 snipers simultaneously. There is, I was going for the chest here, but I'll show another run that I did where I actually completed it. It was a little bit slower. It was 57 seconds. But we got it done. At least we got the chest, we got platinum rewards, so that's nice. Now this is just to show that this build can really hold its own in tougher content. You know, legend level content like this is going to be higher difficulty than things like dungeons and raids and stuff like that. So you can easily take this into dungeons and raids and just tear it up with this. And you could also use this for like a raid boss encounter as well, because you got your explosive light rocket launcher, or you can throw on Galley. Somebody in your team will have Galley, you know, so you got that. You can throw on the Izanagi instead of the Supremacy that I'm running. And then you could also, if you wanted, if you're going to throw your Thunder Crash out there, you could just simply swap off the gloves to Falling Star, and boom, you do your Thunder Crash, and then you can go ahead and swap it back. So it's very versatile in that sense. And also, this build can really be great in Grandmasters because your subclass alone can deal with 2 different champions just by itself, because your arc grenades, because of Spark of Shock, jolt targets, and remember, jolt stuns overload champs, and then your Seismic Strike melee actually applies blind, which stuns unstoppables. So the only thing you have to worry about is barrier champions. And remember, we're running a sniper in the kinetic slot. We don't have an exotic slot taken up. You know what that means? You can run Arbalest or Wish Ender, and there you go. You can deal with all 3 champions just by using your top slot. And you can still keep your 1-2 punch shotgun and your rocket launcher or a machine gun, whatever you want to run. Now for the gameplay loop with this build, it's pretty simple, just punch everything, but I will also note that if you're gonna go up to a fatter target and you do not have knockout procced, then what you may need to do is prime them with your shotgun. Spam your shotgun at them, get them weak, because remember, you can proc knockout by critically wounding a target. So in some situations, you may need to do that. So you have to be careful sometimes. You know, the build's not exactly just plug and play. It's a skill gap, and you have to really learn how to use it effectively. So as always, I will leave a dim loadout link to this build down below in the description and the pinned comment if you'd like to give it a try, or share it with your Titan main buddies. I greatly appreciate that. And if you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit the like button and drop a comment, because interacting with the video in different types of ways like that really helps out the algorithm. It really helps out. And if you are new here, consider subscribing. Would love to have you here. And with that, I will catch you in the next video. See you later.